I invite you to stand as you are able for the reading of the Holy Gospel according to Luke, chapter 15. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them?" So Jesus told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So the father divided his property between his sons. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but I am dying of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he sent off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called to one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back, safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you. I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Why was the younger son hungry? Why did he wish he could eat what the pigs had to eat? New Testament scholar Mark Allen Powell asks this question to 3 groups of people from around the world: people from the United States, people from Russia, people from Tanzania. Interestingly, these 3 groups gave different answers. The Americans explained the younger son squandered his wealth and used up all of his money. The Russians explained there was a famine. The Tanzanians explained no one helped him. Who gave the correct answer? It's a trick question because all of them did. The young man spent his money, was living in a land that experienced a famine, and no one helped him. Why is it that the Americans noticed that the younger son had made mistakes and wasted his money, but didn't notice that there was a famine and that no one helped him? The Bible teaches us about God. how we read the Bible also teaches us something about ourselves. As Americans, we live in a society that preaches financial responsibility, financial restraint, and also personal responsibility to take care of ourselves. The younger son exercised neither personal responsibility nor financial restraint. He messed up, spent all of his money, and got himself in a bad situation, lived beyond his means. In this understanding, the younger son is the lost son, the one needing grace. Accordingly, we tend to hear of God's grace as forgiveness for when we mess up. When I was in college, I worked at a Christian summer camp for 2 summers. While at staff training, camp staff were taught to teach our faith story and share our faith story like we were the wasteful younger brother. We had to first share of when we messed up, were no longer in right relationship with God, and then needed forgiveness. We then had to share this conversion moment where we realized things were better back at our Father's house, and so we had to turn towards God and receive forgiveness. Some of you have faith stories like this, I'm sure. Like my friend from seminary, who's now a wonderful pastor on the East Coast. He was raised Lutheran but refused to be confirmed as a teenager, rejected faith altogether, moved to Brooklyn, and became a painter. And after about 10 years from the time he refused to be confirmed, he had this mystical experience of sorts, returned to faith, and became a pastor. It's a cool story. It's not my story, though. Over my first summer at camp, I was also struck that this narrative arc for a faith story did not nicely fit with the stories, the needs, and the hurts of many of my campers. I had campers who were insecure after years of being bullied. I had kids who were coming to grips with their sexuality and were afraid what would happen to them if they came out and revealed their full selves. And there were teens who felt pressure to be perfect students, star athletes, standout musicians, and popular in school, all at the same time in order to feel love, worth, and acceptance. My campers didn't just need to hear a story of a lost son who had made mistakes and lost his way. They also yearned for a story of a lost son who wondered if anyone cared enough to help them. They needed a story kind of like what the Tanzanians noticed, a son in need because no one helped him, a son who felt overlooked, passed over, forgotten, uncared for, a son whose father is filled with compassion and comes running to him in his need. After living through 2+ years of this COVID-19 pandemic, maybe we pay attention to the calamities that come up unexpectedly in this parable a bit differently. And we have something to learn also from the Russian reading of this story, where famine struck. The younger son wasn't quite ready and became hungry. Maybe we feel like we were doing fine when everything else was going okay, but then disaster struck and the world got turned on its head. Maybe something unexpected happened and everything changed. I didn't quite know what to do next. Maybe the COVID-19 pandemic did this to you. Or maybe it was another sort of medical diagnosis. Maybe it was cancer. Maybe mental illness. Or maybe losing a job. Or losing a loved one. And now you feel helpless and vulnerable, unlike you have ever before, and need just something to go right. From a long way off, the father noticed the younger son, and in his compassion, gave the younger son a new robe and a ring. Rings are not just fancy jewelry in biblical times. They signify authority. Chances are this ring was a signet ring. It meant the son had been restored to his place in the family, and he could make financial and legal decisions as a member of the family. Things had gone terribly wrong, but his fortunes had been restored by his loving father. Friends, wherever you find yourself today, God's love and God's mercy, like the Father in Jesus' parable today, comes running to you with grace that forgives, with grace that heals, grace that reconciles, grace that restores. God's grace is running for you and for everyone else too. Even for those who you can't imagine why or how God could extend grace. God is running with grace for all. And God's grace is bigger and better and wider than we could imagine or we deserve. And God's grace is restoring and remaking all things. For this, thanks be to God. Amen.